Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Yorgos Lanthimos' latest film, Kinds of Kindness. This movie stars Emma Stone, Jesse Plemons, Willem, Dafoe, Margaret, Qualley, Mamoudzou, Athie, Chau, and Alwyn. And this is coming right off the heels of Poor Things, which of course won a bunch of awards at last year's Oscars ceremony. And I was very excited for this, mainly because I am a fan of Yorgos Lanthimos' films. For the most part, they're all very weird and not for everybody, but I am still a fan of his. And this was, again, he just got right up back on the horse and made yet another film incredibly close to his last one. This is an interesting one because it is essentially an anthology film. It has three separate stories, all with the same cast members, but they're all playing different characters with vastly different stories that are all connected loosely by thematic connections rather than story connections. And even though Poor Things did reach a more mainstream audience, I think this film very much shows that Yorgos Lanthimos is not interested at all in making a mainstream film. He very much makes very Yorgos Lanthimos type films, and yet again he has made a very Yorgos Lanthimos type film that will remind the audience that his films are not for everybody. So I will be getting into spoilers for this film because I think it is extremely weird, extremely bizarre, and very thematically resonant. That is a film that kind of places its story in front of you and just lets you figure it out. So first I do want to get into the thematic connections that this movie has that kind of is the theme throughout the entirety of the movie, at least what I think is the themes of the movie, and then I'll get into the three films individually. And I'll start off by saying that, every once in a while there comes a film and a song that is paired with that film that becomes synonymous with each other, like Hooked on a Feeling and Guardians of the Galaxy. When I think of one of those two things, I think of the other just instantly in my mind. And I'm going to feel the same way about this film and Sweet Dreams, which is the song that is played mainly in the trailers of this film and that is also played at the beginning of this film, because I think the lyrics of that song very much hammer home what this movie is trying to say thematically. Everybody's looking for something. Some of them want to use you, some of them want to get used by you, some of them want to abuse you, some of them want to be abused. And these are the lyrics that I think kind of explore the themes of this movie that I think is the connective tissue between all of these stories, because like the poster kind of insinuates, this movie is about the kind faces that we put on to mask our controlling nature as humanity. And I think that there are a lot of people in this world that are very controlling by nature, and there's a lot of people that are very, submissive by nature, that are willing to be controlled in any given scenario. And I think you can apply this to many different things. You can apply this into, relationships, into, power dynamics in, your job, or even religious aspects. That I think is the three areas that this movie does explore. The first story explores kind of like the power dynamics between a boss and the employee. The second one is in a relationship, and the third one is in a cult of sorts. And so I think that is what I think is what ties all these films together. And like I said, this movie does just present you these three stories and doesn't really give any info on what you really should feel about these three things. It just places it in front of you and tells you to figure it out on your own, which is, I think, what makes, Yorgos Lanthimos' films very divisive amongst a lot of people, because some people are going to watch this film and just immediately think that this movie just kind of meanders for 3 hours long and it doesn't really have anything necessarily overt about its stories. But I think the storytelling in general has a lot more to say under the surface that is going to push a lot of mainstream audiences away. So let's get into the first section of this film, which is called The Death of RMF. And if I'm being completely honest, I do think that this film kind of is, a bit of diminishing returns, where you have the first section, which I think is better than the second section, which I think is better than the third section. So I think as the film goes on, as the runtime stretches on longer and longer, I do think that it does get a little bit tiring as it goes on. But as it started off with the first section, which I think is my favorite of the three, I'm very much engaged, and what is consistent is the performances, the direction, and the cinematography in this movie, which is all top tier Yorgos Lanthimos. This section mainly follows Jesse Plemons, who is the employee underneath Willem Dafoe's character, who is extremely controlling over every aspect of his life, to a point where he tells him what he should eat and what he shouldn't eat, what weight he should be at. He tells him that, he can't have sex with his wife on this day, he can't have sex with his wife on this day. He controls every aspect of his social life. He essentially constructed his marriage from the ground up, telling him to go flirt with Chau's character, who plays Jesse Plemons' wife in this short, to a point where he basically has him do all these tasks. After work one day, he says that he needs to, stop at this intersection, and there's going to be this guy that's going to drive up in this blue BMW, and when he goes across the intersection, you have to go ahead and hit him with your car and be hospitalized, because that is what I want you to do. That is what I need you to do to become, to still be in good graces with him. It's this very controlling nature where if he doesn't do what he is told, he's going to be cut out of Willem Dafoe's life entirely. And because he is so obsessed with that control, with that, situation that he has with Willem Dafoe's character, this weird, twisted love controlling relationship that he has with him, he has to do it. And when this all goes wrong and he is not hospitalized by the situation, which Jesse Plemons is very funny with kind of the deadpan, kind of performance that he has when he's in the ambulance saying, oh, I'm really not feeling well. I really think I should be hospitalized. And the nurse is just like, oh, well, we'll do some checkups, but I think you just have a scratch on your head. And he's very insistent on being hospitalized because he knows that he is messed up. He was too afraid to hit this car as hard as he possibly could have, and he failed at the task that Willem Dafoe wanted him to do. And Willem Dafoe is very forgiving in this. He has, there's a scene in here where, Jesse Plemons goes over to his house to essentially apologize for it, and he has him rehearse this a few times. He has him, walk in, be introduced by, Willem Dafoe's wife, played by Margaret Qualley, that kind of introduces him into the situation, has him sit down, and is like, oh, that doesn't feel right. Maybe you'll just come in alone, and maybe you'll stand up this time. And again, it's a very controlling type of scenario where Jesse Plemons cannot do anything for his own free will. He is controlled with every aspect of his life. And when Jesse Plemons is not willing to get in the accident again and to redo the entire situation, just this time hit the car harder because he's afraid to kill this other person. He's not willing to kill another man in order to, satisfy his relationship with Willem Dafoe. And, this is very interesting because Jesse Plemons' character has done crazier things for this character, even to a point where, he wanted kids with his wife, but Willem Dafoe didn't want him to have kids with his wife. So Willem Dafoe essentially orchestrates these abortions that his wife is going to have in order to not have a child, which makes her think that she's not able to give birth, which is a super messed up thing to do, to force that upon somebody instead of having it be their choice. That is as messed up as you can be. And so when faced with a situation where he's literally, tempted to possibly kill somebody, that is also a very extreme situation that he just is not willing to cross that line once again. And this is when you see that his entire situation is easily replaced by Willem Dafoe. He doesn't really care too much about that. He cares about, controlling somebody. That is his true motives. That is his true nature, is controlling this character. And so he replaces Jesse Plemons when he's not willing to do the things that he wants him to do. Jesse Plemons' wife disappears when he tells her the truth. The tennis racket that is gifted to them by Willem Dafoe's character magically vanishes overnight, and he starts to see Emma Stone's character hanging out with Willem Dafoe in these fancy dresses, driving the same car that he has, and it becomes clear when, he tries to create a situation where he can go on a date with Emma Stone's character. When she doesn't go on a date with him, he sees that she got in a car accident and was hospitalized for that, in the very much the same situation that Willem Dafoe had him do earlier in the film. And so again, he is easily replaced. He's being controlled by these characters, and it does have, I guess, the basis of what I think is the themes of this movie, which is control and suppression and maybe just like obsession with these characters, and how this weird twisted love story kind of goes throughout the entirety of this film. It's very weird, but it was so engaging because of Jesse Plemons. I have been a massive fan of Jesse Plemons since Fargo Season 2. If you have not seen Fargo Season 2, definitely watch. I think most people know him from Breaking Bad probably, but he was also in Civil War last year, and every time he's in a role, you are just completely enraptured by his performance every single time. And I think this is the first time he's been really the front and center focus, the lead of a film since Fargo, really. And I loved him in this film. I think he really does match and fit well with Yorgos Lanthimos' style of direction, and he was just really engaging in this entire first short. And I really felt for the guy's desperation as he slowly spirals down out of control to a point where he goes over to the hospital and he, disguises himself as one of the nurses, and he takes the guy who was hit by the car in the previous scene, and he just drops him off in the middle of the street, and he runs over him multiple times, killing this character in order to get into good graces with Willem Dafoe's character. And the short ends with him lying in bed with both Margaret Qualley and Willem Dafoe, now once again in good graces with these characters, while Margaret Qualley terribly plays a piano and sings the song during the credits. Very weird, very bizarre, but again, I do think that it does connect to the thematic ties of control and obsession that I think was established, just right away with this film, and with that, starting song of Sweet Dreams. The second section is called RMF is Flying. Jesse Plemons this time around plays a cop who is married to Emma Stone's character, who has gone missing after a boating accident. We don't exactly know where she was. She was stranded on an island of sorts for, I guess, an unknown amount of time, clearly long enough to be gone to a point where this character is desperate. The cops are kind of losing faith on finding her, and he's desperate, and he's really depressed in his life, missing his wife, and he's telling his friend, who's played by Mamoudzou Athie in this film, that he feels empty without her, until one day, of course, Emma Stone's character is rescued. She's flown in by a helicopter by the RMF character, who I also kind of failed to mention in that last short. RMF is the guy who gets run over by the car at the end of it. That's why it's called the Death of RMF. This guy pops up in each of these shorts as kind of one of the integral parts of it. I don't think he's as integral role in this second section besides just being the helicopter pilot that finds Emma Stone's character, that is kind of the inciting incident of this entire situation. But either way, she is found, she's rescued, and she's being reintegrated into her life with her loving husband, played by Jesse Plemons. But as the short progresses, he starts to realize that there's a bunch of little inconsequential things that is kind of different about her character, after returning, that's, on their own maybe doesn't mean anything, but since there is a lot of little things that just feel off about Emma Stone's character, he starts to think that maybe that isn't his actual wife. It's a lot of little things, like her shoes don't fit the same anymore, that she used to not like chocolate, now she's eating chocolate, she's asking for sex in his uniform, she's doing all these weird things that, again, are not necessarily weird, but on their own, but it feels off enough where only he could think that she's not the same. There's a lot of really awkward sequences in this movie. His best friend, who is also a cop in this short, is played by Mamoudzou Athie, who is also really great in all three of these sections. I think he pretty much has, I think his most prominent role is in this second one. He is married to Margaret Qualley's character, and they are, best friends with this couple, and they even, have orgies together. It's a really weird situation that they have, but there's a dinner sequence where after Emma Stone has returned, and, he's trying to tell him that there's something different about him, and he also just won't believe it. And it's a very awkward and tense sequence that has a lot of dark comedy within all of it as well, that I thought did play extremely well. But this character, once again, Jesse Plemons is great at playing this character that kind of has a spiraling downfall as this entire thing progresses. He stops eating, and this is where the controlling nature of what I think this character is in this film, whereas this time around he is the controlling one in this relationship. And it starts off with a bunch of little things to where, like, he won't eat food anymore, and she's trying to satisfy him by making his favorite meals, by feeding him, by doing all these things to try to fit in to this relationship. And I think that this character is trying to subtly control her to be exactly what he wants her to be, because he was satisfied with his life before, and after this character went through a very traumatic experience being stranded on this island, and it's alluded to that that she had to resort to cannibalism in order to survive, and so she's very much changed as a person. But since she's no longer the same and Jesse Plemons wants her to be who she was before, he's trying to control her and manipulate her to be who she was before. And it is a very subtle manipulation and just abusive relationship that they have, a very toxic relationship that is very unsettling as you get further on into the short. And like I said, it's Yorgos Lanthimos. It gets weird. He starts to ask her that, oh, these meals are not good enough. I want your thumb. Cut off your finger or your thumb and cook it up with some onions and feed it to me. And that is what she does. She cuts off her own finger to satisfy this character, and that's still not enough, and so she has to cut out her own liver in order to feed this character, and that's what she does. It cuts to her dead body on this chair. Her liver is out on the ground, and Jesse Plemons just kind of looks at her, and hears the doorbell rings, goes over to it, and Emma Stone then walks into the house. And it is, again, a very weird and twisted ending of how he just makes her do all these things in order to control her to a point where it kills her. And now his delusions think that he's gotten what he wants, who is the real wife. That's not even the weirdest thing in this short. There's a scene where Emma Stone's character is talking to her father, played by Willem Dafoe, and Willem Dafoe's character just really does not like Jesse Plemons. He never really has, and he doesn't want to go in there and see if he's feeling any better, and he just wants to get out of there. And so Emma Stone tells him this weird story about this dream she had, where in this alternate world, dogs were humans and humans were dogs, where you have dogs driving cars, you have dogs sitting at the beach drinking cocktails, living out in the sunlight, and then you have like a human laying out on the road as roadkill, and that's, the dogs treated humans very well in this world. And that is kind of the dream, essentially, that you have this character dynamic, this controlling nature of what you have between, I guess, humanity and pets. And maybe that's also something about control. And the short ends with the credit sequence playing over, dogs driving cars, and you see a human laying out as roadkill on the road. It's very weird. I don't really know what to make of it, other than the fact that maybe that is kind of the controlling relationship, that is kind of a metaphor for how she feels in this relationship. I don't really know. It is very weird and bizarre. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this one, specifically because this one was definitely one of the most bizarre things about this film. The last section is called RMF Eats a Sandwich, and as the film progresses, you have the first section, which was very much focused on Jesse Plemons, and the second one kind of took an even playing field between Jesse Plemons and Emma Stone, and now this third one, Jesse Plemons takes a back seat, and now you have Emma Stone being the lead of this section. And this one's a weird one. It basically has these two characters playing, these members of this cult, essentially. Then they're essentially looking for somebody. You don't really know who or why they're looking for this person, but that they're kind of testing different people. They test Hunter Schafer's character at the beginning of this short to see if they have this ability to, you know, make this dead body move his finger or to open his eyes. And you think that maybe they're looking for somebody that can bring somebody back from the dead, and that is what this religious cult is kind of seeking out as this messianic figure of sorts. And again, when it comes to controlling natures, you had the first one being a power dynamics thing, you had the second one being a relationship thing, and this one I think is a religious thing, where these characters feel obligated to do all these weird things in order to stay in good graces with their religion. There's this weird thing about people being contaminated or uncontaminated. You have to be clean, you have to not do certain things, you can't go out having sex with other people, you have to have sex with either Chau or Willem Dafoe's character, who are kind of the lead members of this cult. It's very weird. I'm kind of known for, whenever there's a cult type storyline, of not really getting it at first or not really being as interested in it as first. I think the most famous situation with me is I hated Midsommar when I first watched it, and it took time for me to really understand that movie and to really fall in love with it. Now I love Midsommar, but I walked out of that movie the first time I watched it absolutely despising it, and over time I began to like it more. And I feel like the same is going to be the case with this one, where this one I didn't necessarily dislike it, it was very strange for me, and it had some very interesting stuff in it as well. Emma Stone's character at one point in her past left her husband and her daughter in order to pursue this cult of sorts. So throughout the entire thing, there's this kind of push and pull of whether or not she's going to continue on with this cult, or if she's going to go and visit her daughter, because she clearly has a very strong connection with her daughter and misses her very much, but she very much does not miss her husband, because this husband character is literally the worst person in the world. Probably the most uncomfortable thing in this movie, filled with a lot of uncomfortable moments, is easily going to be the rape scene that happens in this third section, which is just awful. It was extremely hard to watch. And when this movie has this weird balance of dark comedy in it, when it got to something that was just truly unapologetically dark in this movie, it was truly a tonal shift in this last section. But again, it does kind of follow suit with the themes of this movie, which is abuse and control, and these characters that fall into these, you know, situations of either being controlled or being controlling over others. And so I guess thematically it does tie in, but again, that felt so dark and so out of pocket for this movie when I was having fun watching this movie, and all of a sudden I'm very much not having fun watching this movie. But because of this entire situation with her husband, when she goes back to the cult, they say that she is now contaminated, that she's no longer, you know, going to be a part of this cult. She went out and, you know, even if it was non-consensual, she had sex with somebody else, and she is now contaminated in a way that this cult does not allow. She's kicked out of the cult, and, you know, that's still not going to stop her. But either way, Emma Stone's character is still on a mission to find who she's looking for, this chosen one of sorts, and that's when she meets Margaret Qualley's character, who plays twins in this short. And there's certain qualities that this chosen one character needs to have in order to be the chosen one. They need to be a twin, their other twin sister or brother or whoever it is needs to be dead, and they need to have, you know, the certain upbringing that they had in their lives, and they need to be able to, you know, touch the body of somebody who is dead, say these certain words, and bring them back to life. And so when she's investigating all these different things, then she meets Margaret Qualley's character, who one of the twins thinks that her sister could be this chosen one of sorts, because she tells a story about when they were kids. They were out by the pool partying and drinking, and, you know, her character decides to jump into the pool that had no water, and she just basically dove headfirst into this pit essentially, and died essentially. She cracked her skull open, and when her sister goes over to her and brings her back into the house, she wakes up and she's miraculously healed, and that's why she thinks that her sister is the chosen one. So it does kind of follow suit with those things. The sister was dead at one point. She has a story that possibly leads to her being brought back to life by her twin sister, and of course she's a twin. They had this upbringing, and it all just kind of fits the narrative. But this twin sister needs to, you know, be willing in order to be brought in to bring somebody back to life. And so Emma Stone's character kind of just harms this dog in order to bring her to the veterinarian, which is the twin sister. There's a lot of weird stuff in this short, and she essentially kidnaps this veterinarian, brings her to the morgue, and, you know, forces her to, you know, put her hand on this dead body to say the words, and the dead body comes back to life. And that is the RMF character in this short. It is that one guy who's been popping up in every single film. But since she has now found the chosen one, she's dancing in the street. She's very excited. She thinks that this can get her back in good graces with, you know, this cult. And so she's done all these terrible things. She's harmed this dog. She kidnapped this woman. Now she's thrown her in the backseat of her Dodge Challenger. She's going to be speeding out to go to the boat to try to get in good graces back with the cult. Again, this is yet another storyline where somebody is so desperate to get in good graces by the characters that are being controlling over her. And so she's flying down the streets, and there's a car in the road. She swerves and she crashes into another car, and, you know, you have Margaret Qualley's character, who is not, you know, buckled up in the backseat, fly through a windshield, and now she has killed the chosen one. It is very much one of those moments where you went through all this stuff just to fail at the very ending, and it was another very darkly comedic moment in this. You have this character with the miraculous ability to bring people back to life, and she is killed unceremoniously at the ending of this short, with the only character being brought back to life being this RMF character who just goes over and he eats a sandwich, and that is why it's called RMF Eats a Sandwich. Again, all three of these shorts are vastly different and very weird and very Yorgos Lanthimos in all their very individual ways, and I think the thematic element of control and abuse and obsession kind of is the I guess the thread that kind of connects all of these shorts together to make What Kinds of Kindness really is. And honestly, I really did enjoy watching this film. It's not my favorite from Yorgos Lanthimos, but it was always engaging from the beginning to the end, even with its extremely long runtime. And I definitely think it's one of those films that the more I think about it, the more I'm going to really love the attention to detail that this movie has, especially with the marketing of this film, with those posters. I'm going to mention those posters again, of those masks that you put on, those kind faces that you put on to mask your true feelings of either being obsessed with something or being controlling by nature or being abusive, whatever the case may be, you put on those masks to hide who you truly are. And I think that in general, as it is with this film, I think that is the point. I think some people are going to struggle with thinking, what is the point of this film? Well, if you watch this entire spoiler review, that is what I think the point of it all is. And of course, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on all these three shorts, and how would you also rank them? I think I would rank them as definitely the first one being my favorite, the second one being my second favorite, and the third one being my least favorite. But again, I was very much interested in all three of them as they were presented to me. Let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are and how you would rank these three shorts, and what did you think of Yorgos Lanthimos' filmography overall? I very much enjoy his films, but again, it's not going to be for everyone. So thanks everybody for watching this review. If you did enjoy, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe to the channel to see more reviews just like this one. I'm doing weekly reviews for The Acolyte, which I'm having very fun speculating about as time goes on. It's a very interesting show that is also very flawed, so definitely check out my reviews for that, along with all other movie reviews that I have out here on the channel. But thanks everybody for watching. Like I said, leave a comment down below, leave a like and subscribe, and I hope to see you all in my next one.